Hi, welcome to another Unity tutorial. In this tutorial, I want to show you how to add your own animations, custom animations, to characters and to control them. In this case, it's going to be Astrodude. Now, this is an old asset that Unity used to have, and it's not available in the store anymore. What I've done is convert it into mecanim, and it's on my website in the resources directory. So have a look for it there. You can download it as a package and bring it into your own project. Now what he'll do is when I hit the space bar, he's going to jump up and fly. And then when you let go of the space bar, he goes down. Now he's also got the ordinary running animations on him as well. But he can fly very easily just by adding some simple mechanics into your animator. To get started, you'll need a copy of Astro in your scene. Now, that particular model, if we have a look in the assets folder, after you've dragged in that package and unpacked it, you'll find that there's a player folder in that set of folders, and it's called player. So it's got a little blue cube next to it with a small piece of paper, and you just drag and drop that into your scene wherever you might want Astro to be. Okay, like that. So delete that character. Now with our player character that's in the scene, there'll be nothing on it except to transform. And if you drop down the arrow next to it to have a look what's inside its hierarchy, you'll be able to find all of the bones that are controlling the movements of that character. And we'll need to know all these in a moment. But first of all, we're going to put on just the default animations that come with the character. To do that, select your character in the hierarchy, and you're going to need to add an animator. The animator needs a controller, which we'll create in a moment, and an avatar. Now the avatar you're going to find, if you go back to the object that you dragged into the scene, which is this player, drop down the hierarchy of that, and if you look through here, there's an object called player avatar. This player avatar happens when you create a new mecanim character. So this character was one of the generic characters that was in the old Unity animation system, the legacy stuff. When you switch it over and make it into a generic character, then it will create an avatar for you. Generic or humanoid will do it as well. We're going to use just the generic one today. So grab hold of this player avatar and you can drag and drop that into the avatar section in the animator. All right, now we can create the controller. So let's go back to our assets root folder there, and we'll create an animator controller. Again, it's going to be off the screen for me, but you'll see it down there. And it comes up, it has this little gray icon with what looks like little squares inside of it. Let's call this Astro Anims. And with that controller, we're going to put that onto our player. So up here in this empty spot for control, you want to drag and drop Astro Anims like that. Great. Now if you play at this point, nothing will happen because we haven't put any animations in there. But if we double click on the Astro animations, we'll get this empty state, which you should be familiar with if you've watched my other videos on animating the mecanim system. Into this animation window, I should call it Animator. I keep mixing those windows up, sorry, because there are two of them. There's an Animator and an Animation, but this is the Animator. Now go into Assets, Art, Graphics, Animations for Astro, and you'll find all of these animations that came with the original Astro model. Now we're after the idle one, so grab the idle one and drag and drop it into the Animator, and that will set up the default animation, which always shows in orange. If we press play at this point, because everything's linked up, he will go and play his idle animation. The next one we'll add is our running forward animation. Drag and drop that into the scene. And while we're here, we may as well add this jump. So player jump, bring that in as well. We'll use that in a moment. But first of all, we'll get an idle and running state happening and turn the character around as he's running forward and backwards and in circles. So to go from idle to run forward, we have to create a transition. So right click on that, make transition, and drop it there. And then we also want to come back the other way. So make another transition and go back like that. To trigger this transition from here to here and here to here, we're going to use a Boolean value that says when is running is yes, we will go this way, and when is running is no, we'll go that way. So go over to the parameters and click on add, and we'll add a bool, not a float, a bool, and call it is running. And we also need one for the jump later on, so while we're here we'll create that too. Now that will be a trigger, so select trigger and call it is jumping. And now I need some code to control those animations. So back in our assets folder, we will right click, create C# script and call it player controller. We'll open that up and let's put this code in. Okay, so we've got our class player controller. Inside there's a link to our animator that's on our character. Then we've got a speed and a rotation that you can set, and this will change how fast the character moves forward and how fast they turn around. This code will use the up and down arrow keys and also work with WASD keys because we're going to use the vertical and horizontal axes to grab those values. Now this is the code that I've used in pretty much all of the animation tutorials for moving a character around because it's just so easy to dump into here and work straight away. And this code is originally from the Unity website, and in fact if you're looking for it, I think if you do a search in the script documentation and type in get access, you'll end up with finding this code that's in there. So it's a really simple way of moving a character. Okay, so we use the let's see, the up and down arrow keys, which are the vertical ones here, to set the translation, and then the left and right arrow keys, which are the horizontal, to get the rotation, which we multiply by delta time for smoothness, and then we use those values to do a translate, moving it forward and backwards along the z-axis, and rotate around the y-axis. Right, so I do update, and I probably should do fixed update. If you ever want to add a camera that's going to follow your character around, it's good to have the movement script in a late update or a fixed update. Whatever update function you use in your camera for following your character, you should use the same update function in here. I just use update, I guess, because it's there, but yeah, you will get jitteriness if you don't have the same functions used for a following camera and for your player controller. And having it just in update won't work, so you do have to put it out into a fixed update, for example. Let's get back to the code. And after we've done the translation and rotation, we're testing for the actual translation value that if it happens to be greater than 0, then the character must be moving. And if the character is moving, then we want to run this is running. So we set is running to true, which will do that transition, which goes along here from idle down into here, and we'll go around and do the running. Now, if we're not moving at all, is running will be set to false, and it's going to come back up here. Now we haven't set these up yet, so I'll do that in a moment. So that's our code for player control. Let's just save that. Go back to Unity. Now going from idle to running on this transition, if you click on it, we're going to go over to the inspector and in conditions add is running to true. Now that's going to come up automatically. Now going back the other way, we want to add a condition is running false. Now, when we hit the arrow key to run, we don't want him to slide along the ground, which he probably will do at the moment. And I'll just show you that. So let's press play. And when I use the arrow keys, first of all, I should add the code to the character. Grab the player controller code and drop it onto your character. Otherwise, he's not going anywhere. Okay, so let's now see how he slides a bit before that running animation kicks in. And that's because this idle animation hasn't finished running. Therefore, we want to interrupt the idle to make it go straight to this here. So if you click on the transition, over in Inspector, you can turn off the setting that's got has exit time. That will stop idle from completing its cycle before we go down to run forward. And the same thing coming back. You don't want the running to still be going while you have taken your fingers off the keys and he's not moving anywhere. So let's turn off this has exit time. Now when we press play and we use the keys, as soon as we press the keys, he will go into those animations. To go into the flying animation, first of all, we're going to go to the jump. So we'll make it that you press the space bar and he will jump and then start flying. And when you release the space bar, he's going to stop flying and go into sort of a reverse jump and then land on the ground. So to do that, to begin with, we need to get into jump, which is this one here, from either our idle or our run forward. If I put this over here, we can create a transition to jump and make a transition to go back. This transition here we want to be triggered by is jumping. So let's add that into the transition. So is jumping. Now is jumping is a trigger, so it doesn't actually have a set. It just means when that's triggered it will go and do the jumping. And at the moment when the jumping is finished, it will just automatically go back into idle, and we'll just change the code to play that. So inside here and just above our translation, let's add in this. This little bit of code is going to trigger the is jumping trigger in the animations when the space bar is pressed. And the space bar can also be represented by jump in double quotes, as you can see in this get button down function. So let's just save that. We'll go back into Unity, and on this transition from idle to jump, we've got our is jumping condition, but remember we also want to turn off this has exit time as well. We're not turning off the has exit time on the jump because we want it to play the whole jump animation. So let's just press play and press the space bar. And you can see he does a little bit of a jump animation and then goes back into idle. Alright, so now it's time to do the flying animation, which is not part of the package, so we have to make that ourselves. And we'll take a look at that in part 2 of this series.